So what these large channels do is they actually dilute your survival resources. And the way they do this is they sell you branded goods, expensive goods, new goods, gear, weapons, equipment, and they also sell you training and courses which you could get for free online. So the majority of people are taking the broad path and they're following these large channels, and they're actually spending their money and diluting their survivability resources by doing that. So we're going to discuss surviving and multiplying your survival resources rather than diluting them like these main channels do. So what we want to talk about today is the main reason that people fail in long-term survival situations. Economic collapse is one of the most common long-term survival situations that you could face. If we look through history, it's pretty common and it's cyclical. And since 2008, we've been involved in a slow grind, long-term economic collapse. And at various times, we've had wars, portions of wars, political events, natural disasters mixed in with it. In history, most of the time, disasters happen in groups where you have one overriding disaster, but then you have independent events and events that are secondary effects of the original survival situation. We have a situation similar to that now, where there's a lot of inputs and issues. So when you couple the supply chain issues, the activities of hard money groups, hedge funds, and venture capitalists destroying various parts of the economy, the activities of those groups destroying parts of the economy have a lot more to do with the limited supply of repair parts and goods than a lot of the other situations have. So one of the issues we have is longevity and also the quantity of consumables. So in a long-term survival situation, everything becomes a consumable. Land, vehicles, equipment, supplies, food, water, everything is a consumable, and it only has a limited lifespan. So we have to think about ways to offset this issue of limited lifespan. One of them is quantity. And the only realistic way that the average person can get quantity is buying used goods and getting free stuff. And we'll discuss free stuff in depth a little bit later in the video, because all free stuff actually has costs, whether that is going to get it, hauling it, processing it, storing it. Everything has cost to it. And the time that you spent going to get some free stuff, you could have been doing something else, so you have an opportunity cost there too. But in 9 times out of 10, free stuff outweighs the other costs associated with it. So in long-term survival, we really got to look at used goods. So for instance, to get all the clothing you need for winter and for working year-round, what you're going to find is you need to buy bulk lot purchases of used goods. So there's no reason to pay $100 for a shirt and $300 for a coat when you can buy them in quantity and individually at resale shops, on eBay, at pawn shops, and all kinds of other places, mission resale centers. And you can take these goods and stockpile them in totes. You can easily buy 10 or 15 years worth of clothing that's used or new old stock and put that away for the cost of what you would pay for 1 year's worth of clothes. This is something I do in quantity. So in our group, we have a large stockpile of winter gear, winter clothing, field gear, work clothes. The biggest problem I've found is finding adequate shoes and boots. Those you usually have to purchase new. But as far as the coats, you can pay $20 or $30 for a $600 coat with no problem. And when we're looking for stuff, what we want to do is minimize what we're paying. So in order to do that, we want to look for free shipping if we're doing auction sites. We want to look to offset sales tax. So if sales tax is included in the price and not added on, you actually know what the cost is. The other thing is buying in bulk. So if you have to ship, buying in bulk offsets that. And the next thing is group buying. So you could buy as a large group. And this way, you can make large quantity purchases, and it greatly reduces the impact of shipping. It reduces the impact of buying large quantities. I've made quantity deals on all kinds of things, and those quantities would contain a large amount of material that I didn't need or have a use for. So a secondary effect of buying used goods is reselling, salvage, and repair work. Over the years, I've bought large amounts of used goods, both as a business and as an individual, and I resold most of what I didn't need or traded it and bartered for things I did need. So these are the kind of things we need to keep in mind, because if you follow large channels and you follow the popular survival techniques, they're all about gear sales, branded goods, new goods, and you can't afford the depth you're going to need, because in a survival situation, you're going to go through a lot of gear, you're going to go through a lot of clothing, a lot of food, a lot of water. So any money that you're saving can go toward food production, food accumulation, building water supplies. A lot of farms and acreages are very limited on what they can grow because there's no water supply. So some of the money you save, you could take and actually build ponds in order to provide a water supply to increase your ag output. In my area, there's 4 months of the year that normally you have to provide water in order to grow food. This year we've had a severe drought, so we've had to supply water for the last 2 months, which is not normal in our environment. These are the kind of things that you can offset by buying used gear, used clothing, used vehicles, used tools. And you don't have to follow everybody else's advice. You can do what you need to do and what benefits you the most. Now, the next thing I want to talk about in economic collapse is perception. Because I've noticed people like Blackscoutsurvival, they always cut people by saying you live with your mama or you live in the garage or the basement and that kind of Bravo Sierra. Now, going into a long-term economic collapse, one of the most successful models is multi-generations living in the same building, farm, compound, etc. So moving forward, people keep forgetting you can offset all of the inflation and the costs by communal living in family units. On my grandmother's farm, they provided housing, room and board for the workers on their farm. If you have acreage, you can have bunk houses instead of individual houses, and you can house your family. You can put a bunkhouse for workers that are going to help you. And one situation to look at is room and board if you don't have money, because you can work on places for room and board during economic collapses, and at least you can eat and live. The other thing is, if there's a shortage of cash, you can pay people with room and board and also with a percentage of the crops that you're growing. You can give them that and they can go trade it. So the other thing is, it's common that people working room and board on farms and other things like that, they'll work a part-time job somewhere else a couple days a week. So they may work on the farm 4 or 5 days, and then they work somewhere else for a couple of days, and that gives them cash flow. Now, one of the growth industries is going to be renovating garages for people to live in, and renovating your mama's basement for people to live in. So contrary to what Black Scout and Canadian Prepper and all the rest of them on these tactical channels say, you're really going to have people living in the basement and living in the garage. You might have them living in both. That is a way to save a huge amount of money. What you have to do is make sure you're not overwhelming the plumbing of the facility. So that's a concern. So the first kind of free stuff we want to talk about is self-salvage. This is where we don't throw away anything useful. A lot of containers can be used in a homestead workshop to put stuff in rather than recycling it. You can also self-salvage concrete blocks, treated lumber, different types of fencing, and utilize that in future projects. The opportunity cost there is you're going to spend time salvaging that you could be used to do other things, but that's offset with the cost. All of these kind of materials are going way up in price. The main thing you got to do is have a facility or a place where you can store this material until you need it, where it doesn't decay. One of the main mistakes I made is not building a large barn when I first moved on the property. So a large barn, workshop, storage site is what you really need. You need more shop and storage space than you do housing space in most situations. That's something they all get wrong. So additional salvage materials, landscaping blocks. I actually had one storage locker I wish I had a bid on years ago. They had about 400 or 500 of the large landscaping blocks, and nobody bid on that. And I could have probably got all those blocks for $100 and hauled them off. So your first cost in free stuff is gathering and hauling it. What I've noticed with a lot of people is if they're giving stuff away, for instance, concrete blocks, bricks, landscaping blocks, they don't want you backing over their yard. So you have to consider whether it's worth wheelbarrowing and carrying that material to your truck. So those are considerations. So the time that you're going to take to salvage it, the distance you have to haul it, and if you're buying the material, what is the unit cost of it plus your labor versus buying it new? So those are all considerations. But when I was a kid, I used to get lots of lawnmowers, chainsaws, and stuff like that because people would just give it to me to get rid of. I'd take it home and we'd repair it, and we'd actually use it in our business to make more money. So these kind of materials you're getting for free, if you don't need to use them, you can trade, barter, or sell that material to somebody else. Another thing to think about is containers for plants. I've got a lot of these I need to go through and sort. This is one pile of them. Some of them are too brittle and need to be thrown away. Some of them are reusable, and the size of them makes a big difference depending on what you're planting. But you can do a lot of container planting in free containers. If you look around, I've seen a lot of people put these out on the curb, and they may have 40 or 50 of these containers where they just replanted, and you can get them for free. Pallets are another thing that you should look for. In some cases, you can burn them depending on whether they've been chemically treated. I use them a lot to store and move material around on the farm. I'd much rather go get them than have to buy them and pay for them. So pallets can be very useful. You can also salvage wood out of them to build stuff. The other thing is you can get free wood. People will cut stuff down and want to get rid of it. I used to haul a huge amount of stuff home from work when I was working, and when we did side work, cleaning up and cutting stuff, I'd bring a lot of that home and we'd burn it or mulch it. So another free thing you can get is mulch. I have a convenient dump area that the power company can dump mulch. And if you talk to the linemen and the people clearing the right of way, and you treat them like a decent human being and show them some respect, they will provide you plenty of chips. And another thing I do is I shred a lot of documents and paper in my business and in the mail, and I make sure there's no plastic in it, and I add that to my compost piles and mix it in, and that way it can rot down in it also. So in general, other things I've seen that were free is stuff that I had given to people through organizations that I volunteer with. So last year when we had all the food aid that we were distributing, we had huge amounts of cardboard. And there's a lot of very poor people in our area, and what I would do is give them pickup truck loads of cardboard. They'd take that home, they'd cut it up, and they'd burn it along with their firewood. We also gave them pallets. They would cut that up and burn it. So there's a lot of possibilities for free stuff. You just have to figure in how far you're hauling it and what kind of labor situation it takes to get it together, to load it, to haul it, and then to process it into what you need it to be. So just a few ideas and examples. So just a few thoughts and ramblings on how to get the quantity of goods necessary to survive in long-term economic collapse.